is, and you point out that Donald Trump is 77. There's only 4 years between Trump and Biden, but they do seem worlds apart. Joe Biden does seem, in terms of his energy, so much older than Donald Trump.
He does, and he's had a couple of highly publicized episodes here. You and I believe, have talked about it before, where he was at a press conference and was looking around for a member of Congress, saying, "Where is Congresswoman Jaworski? Where is she?" And she had died. She had died in a very high-profile car crash a couple weeks before, and he spoke at a memorial for her. So those are the red flags that a lot of Americans now are coming to recognize as limited ability as folks get older. So yes, it is an issue. And Joe Biden, the more he campaigns, the more sort of fuel he's throwing on this fire.
Your democracy is kind of set up for older politicians, isn't it? You kind of have older politicians hanging on for decades in some of these jobs.
The power of incumbency is very, very powerful here. I live in the state of South Carolina, where we actually elected somebody, and I'm not making this up, when he was 100. That's not an exaggeration. Strom Thurmond served in the U.S. Senate for us. Yes, was elected after he turned 100 because nobody else wanted to run against him. That's how strong the power of incumbency can be. There's folks on both parties now talking about what's the best way to get the new generation in. What's the Democrats have good young people, the Republicans have good young people. Would a constitutional amendment limiting the ages, say to 75 or 80, change things? That debate is starting to take place now.
Yeah. Do you have that kind of limit in the corporate world in America? Because I know in some industries here, I think it's board imposed that, you know, you reach a certain age and that's it. You're kind of on the backbench, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, the boards in corporate America are 75. Airplane pilots, believe it or not, are 65. Not that much older than I am. That seems a little low for an airplane pilot. But yes, we have these mandatory retirement ages throughout the country. Keep in mind, the Constitution, our Constitution, limits who can run, but it's not very limited. You have to be 35 years old and be a resident of the state you seek to represent, to be in the Senate. If you're 35 and a natural-born citizen to be president. Those are the only limitations. There are no other limitations. So if we're going to change this, we actually have to change our Constitution, which we haven't done in almost 50 years.
Yeah, look, it's a fascinating conversation, and one I think Americans and perhaps the rest of the world are just starting to have. But before I let you go, I quickly want to ask you about Julian Assange, because there are politicians making their way from Australia to Washington, D.C. to plea for his release, essentially. Any chance America's going to back down on this?
You know, I guess there's a chance. I guess the question is why? What's the constituency? What's the argument for why Julian Assange needs to be treated differently than he has been? I understand there's a group coming. I'm familiar with that. I don't know what the message is that they're going to be delivering. It's going to be a very tough audience because Assange is not very well liked by Democrats or Republicans alike.
Yeah, I think we look at it here in Australia and say, well, look, he's suffering. And Chelsea Manning was pardoned.
That's correct. I don't know if there's a pardon in the way for Julian Assange at any point in the future. Keep in mind, we're just starting to learn about some of the damage that was done by these folks who hacked into our systems. It could be decades again before we know exactly the damage that was done, but we learn more every single year. So again, I think it's a fair conversation to have. I don't know what the pitch is going to be. I'll be curious to see how those folks from Australia are received here this week.
Yeah, it's certainly still very divisive, even here in Australia. Great to see you, as always, Mick Mulvaney. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Laura.